All right, now that we know how to find the least common denominator, let's go ahead and put that into practice with adding and subtracting fractions that have unlike denominators. First example, 1/2 plus 1/3. We have to first convert these into fractions with the same denominator. 2 and 3 both go into 6. That one doesn't require a lot of work, right? So how do I write 1/2 with the denominator of 6? 2 times 3 is 6, so I'll do times 3 times 3. So that's a 3. Sorry about my handwriting. 1 times 3 is 3, 2 times 3 is 6, so 1/2 becomes 3/6, and 3 times 2 gives me 6, so I'll do times 2 times 2. 1 times 2 is 2, 3 times 2 is 6. Great, so now they have the same denominator. 3/6 plus 2/6 gives me 5/6. All right. Next example, I want to do 1/2 minus a negative 1/4. So first thing, that double negative is driving me crazy, so we should probably change that to an addition, instead of subtraction. So I will write it as 1/2 plus the opposite of this number, which is a positive 1/4. So that's like change. Some of us have talked about that in class, or right. So now I'll write each one of these fractions with the same denominator. Since 2 already goes into 4, I can use 4 as my common denominator. So I'll write both of these fractions with a denominator of 4. 2 times 2 is 4, so times 2 times 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. 1/2 becomes 2/4, and 1/4 can just stay the same. 2/4 plus 1/4 gives me 3/4. All right, now let's do one that requires a little bit more work. 7/12 plus 5/18. Now I have to figure out what is the least common multiple of 12 and 18. It doesn't have to be the least common multiple, but that's the one that requires the least amount of work from us. And we just did this in the previous video, and I think that we found that the least common multiple for those two numbers was 36. So I'm going to write each one of these fractions with a denominator of 36. And again, we did this in the last video. 12 times 3 is 36, so I'll do times 3 times 3, 21/36. And 8 times 2, so I'll do times 2 times 2. This gives me 10/36. So now to add these together, I could do 21 plus 10, which gives me 31, and the denominator stays the same. So really, when you're adding fractions together, the only part that requires work is changing your fraction to an equivalent fraction with the least common multiple as the denominator. All right, let's do a few more examples here. Let's add together negative 11/30 plus 23/42. Again, this one's going to require some work from me as well. I'll have to find the factorization of 30. 5 times 6 is 30. 5 is prime. 6 can be factored as 2 times 3. And for 42 can be factored as 6 times 7, and 7 is prime, and 6 is 2 times 3. So I like to line my numbers up. 30 can be written as 2 times 3 times 5, and 42 can be written as 2 times 3 times 7. I'll leave a spot here. So now the least common multiple of these two numbers is the number we're going to build that has all the factors of 30 and all the factors of 42. So I'll need a 2, a factor of 3, and a factor of 5, and a factor of 7. Great, so that's my least common multiple, which is 210. So now I can rewrite these fractions with a denominator of 210. Now we have to find out, what do I multiply 30 by to get 210? Obviously, you could use your calculator, do 210 divided by 30 to see what you get. Or I could just look at all this work I've already done and find what is the missing factor here. What's the factor that's in 210 that's not in 30? Or, yeah. It's this one that I'm missing here. The 7. 30 does not have 7 as a factor, but 210 does have 7 as a factor. So that's the only thing I need to multiply 30 by to get 210. So I'll multiply this times 7 times 7. So this becomes a fraction, negative 77 over 210. And let's look at 42. What factor am I missing in 42 that's in 210? It's this 5 right here. These are our missing factors. So if I multiply 42 times 5, I would get this 210. No. So I'll multiply this times 5 times 5. 23 times 5 is 115, and 42 times 5 is 210. So now I can go ahead and add these fractions together. Negative 77 plus 115 all over 210. All right, so now we also have to remember how to add these numbers together. They have opposite signs, right? This one's negative, that one's positive. And so we really need to find the difference between the two numbers. So off to the side here, I'll write 115 take away 77. And that will give me 38. So now negative 7 plus 115, I know that the difference is 38, and I have more positives than I have negatives, so my answer will be a positive 38 over 210. All right, now we're almost done. This problem requires a lot of work because I have to look at my answer and determine if it can be reduced. And it actually can. So I can go ahead and factor the numerator and denominator, or I can just go one factor at a time, trying to reduce this number to smaller and smaller. So I know because both 38 and 210 are even, we should be able to divide both the numerator and the denominator by 2. So 38 divided by 2 is 19. And 210 divided by 2 is 105. All right, and 19 over 105. 19 is a prime number. I don't think it goes into 105, so there I will stop. All right, so some of these problems require more work than others. So what I would suggest is try to not use your calculator on the majority of these problems until the numbers get quite large, in which case you can use your calculator as an aid. All right, good luck.